Hey everyone, Stephen Glicker here from Roll for Combat, and I have a doozy of an episode for you today. So, I went to a gaming convention last weekend. It was really fun, very small, and a lot of people recognized me, and I was getting two questions all the time. The first question was, is Hasbro really in this much trouble? And the answer is yes, they actually are in a lot of trouble. They actually have to put out money to things like dividends and paying people, and they actually need cash, and they're really running low on cash. Plus, they have an enormous amount of debt, and they have to pay the interest off on that debt. So they're going to have to start raising capital really soon. And the only ways you can really raise capital is to either make more money or fire people or sell things, whether it's stock or actually properties. And then the next question I kept getting was that, okay, if they start selling stuff, what are they going to sell and who are they going to sell it to? And that really made me think quite a bit of like, what could they do and what would they sell? And I think I actually have an answer. And this is going to take a little while, take 5 minutes, but let me go through it of who Hasbro is going to sell Dungeons and Dragons to raise capital. And I actually think it would work and be good for everyone. And I mean everyone. Everyone wins if this happens. So, before I get into it, do like and subscribe. Check out all of our products at battlezoo.com, or you can just go to rollforcombat.com. It's a little confusing, but both work. And you can check out all of our new products. We just came out with the Year of Legends, where you can play a legendary monster. Every single month we come out with a new monster. It works for 5e, it works for Pathfinder, and we have the Year of Monsters, which just completed, where we have 12 legendary monsters that you can play. And you could play demons, doppelgangers, mimics. You could play a dungeon. You could play an intelligent weapon. Wait until you see this thing. Anyhow, check that out at battlezoo.com. Back to the show. So, one thing I like to do is I always look at previous companies that were in a similar situation and see what they did. And good news is that we have one that's very, very similar. There's a little company called Marvel Studios. Well, back then it was just Marvel. And Marvel was a public company way back when. And they were in a lot of trouble in the 90s. So much so that they actually went bankrupt and they needed to raise cash quickly. So what did they do? They did the only thing they could do, because Marvel really had nothing. Okay, if you think about Marvel, they have comics and they have characters. That's it. So they sold off the rights to their characters. And probably a lot of people know this, but they don't know everything. I'm going to tell you a lot of things that people probably don't know. Is that they sold off the rights of their characters to movie studios so they can make movies from their characters. And there was a lot of technicalities in this contract, but the basics is that these studios can use the characters in movies, and then Marvel would keep the rights if they wanted to like print comics or toys from them. The exact details are different for every studio, so I won't get into them because there was a lot of things sold. But the other aspect, which is very important, is that you have to continuously use these characters or the rights revert back to Marvel. And I believe one of the famous ones is that Sony, which now has the rights to Spider-Man, they have to make a new Spider-Man movie at least once every 5 years. And if they don't, the rights go back to Marvel. And that is why you continuously see new Spider-Man movies all the time, whether they're good or not, by Sony. So that way they keep the rights forever. Anyhow, we probably know all these movies because, you heard of Spider-Man, you heard of X-Men, Fantastic Four. There was a Daredevil movie. Blade is a very famous movie. But they, being Marvel, actually sold off like all their characters. They didn't just sell off those. They sold off Black Panther, Iron Man, Thor, Black Widow, Hulk, which actually there were some movies, Blade, which there's some movies, Daredevil, Ghost Rider, there was a movie, Punisher, 2 movies, I believe, Luke Cage, Namor, Ego the Living Planet, Fantastic Four, X-Men, Deadpool. You get the idea. They sold off everyone. And I mean everyone. They just went crazy. And they sold off. There was nothing left. Okay? Nothing was left by the time they were done. And they made millions on this. Now, what happens is that if the movie comes out, Marvel actually does get a very, very, very tiny piece of the profit. I think of like all the Spider-Man movies, Marvel only made something like $60 million. And these are like billion-dollar movies, so give you an idea how small of a piece they get. Now, Marvel was able to get most of these properties back, either through negotiation or just buying them outright, Or they actually do things like, oh, I don't know, buy Fox just so that they can get the rights to their movies back. They literally bought 20th Century Fox just so they can get Deadpool, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and Ego the Living Planet, as well as a few others like Daredevil back, because now they own them. So give you an idea of just how hard it is once you lose these properties. So, with that being said, how, in my opinion, could Hasbro do something similar? Now, I think I figured it out, okay? Oh, I'm so excited to tell everyone about this. So, this is the thing. The D&D brand is worth a fortune, okay? It never gets monetized correctly for a couple of reasons. One of the main reasons is that you can't make that much money on books. So they were trying to figure out ways to make money on things like video games and make things on movies and television properties and so forth, because that's where you could really milk it. The problem is that, strangely, I don't know why Hasbro did it, but they canceled a ton of video game properties last year. I think like 4. They just canceled them outright before they even got anywhere. And there's a Paramount TV show coming or something, but those are not selling off the brand. Those are actually co-produced. So like Hasbro will co-produce this television show, say with Paramount, and like split the costs or something like that. I don't have the exact details, but that's traditionally how it's done. And this way, it's co-produced. So like, Paramount will take care of actually making the show, putting it on their network, and Hasbro will give them all the licensing to their characters, and then they'll make games. So they'll kind of support each other. That's how that works. But what they can do, they being Hasbro, is that they could sell the D&D books and the game itself, and, very important, all the video game rights to somebody for a fair amount of money. And then Hasbro would keep D&D Beyond and maps and all the online tools. They can do this. This is a legitimate offer that could be done, is that say, okay, I'm Hasbro. I'm like, okay, we're not making money in the books. The video games are very complex, very hard to do. How about this? We're going to sell you the rights to make video games, to actually make the books, to shepherd the brand. We still want to be involved because we want to keep the rights to D&D Beyond and all the digital initiatives. Now, that would make sense because they're not getting rid of D&D Beyond because that's where they see all the money's coming from. Now, in the proper hands, the books and the digital content of video games could actually make an absolute fortune. You can just look at the Harry Potter game. That Harry Potter game sold 22 million copies, okay? You can look it up. It did incredibly well. And they're coming out with lots of sequels to that thing. It made a fortune for Warner Brothers. So, okay, who could buy it? And we were thinking this out. I was talking, and people are like, well, will Microsoft buy it? Will Sony buy it? Will EA buy it? Will Blizzard buy it? Like Activision, Blizzard, all those people. Well, they're all kind of part of Microsoft now. So, and there's like, I'm like, well, maybe. But there's one person who not only could buy this, but probably would want to buy it and would do an amazing job. And that's Larian Studios. Now, Larian Studios, if you haven't been following them since their inception, they love D&D. Now, I don't mean they love D&D like we love D&D. They're way past that, okay? Their entire company was basically designed to get the D&D license and build D&D video games. They actually made Divine Divinity 1 and 2 to get Baldur's Gate 3. That is how much they love D&D. And if there's anyone who I would trust to actually continuously make D&D games forever, it would be Larian. And more importantly, who I would trust to actually make the books and come up with new classes and new monsters, new everything, that's Larian. Larian would love this. In fact, they probably know more about D&D than anyone living today, including Hasbro. And I'm pretty confident in that statement. Now, it's going to cost a lot of money. And yes, Larian's a big studio and they do really well, but can they really afford something like this? I mean, this thing would probably cost $200 million. Well, believe it or not, they can, because it's not very well known, but there's a little thing is that Larian is actually secretly owned. 30% of Larian is owned by Tencent. And when Larian was making Baldur's Gate 3, it took them 6 years and they had 400 developers. Someone had to be paying for that, okay? You don't just go around, just paying 400 developers to make a video game over the course of 6 years. And Tencent was helping out. Now, for those of you who are familiar with Tencent, Tencent is basically a technology company in China. They're actually a Chinese multinational technology conglomerate and holding company headquartered in Shenzhen. And they have one of the highest grossing multimedia companies in the world based on revenue. They buy up and produce video games. That's what they do. They love them. And they are worth, according to today, $350 billion. Okay. They're more than 100 times bigger than Hasbro. And they have insanely deep pockets. And they would do nothing more than to have something like D&D in their pocket and in their portfolio. So, Tencent could easily help Larian finance this deal, get Dungeons and Dragons, then Larian makes nothing but D&D products, and Tencent owns a lot of studios, and I mean a lot of studios. Look them up. They can give out the D&D product to all their studios, so it doesn't have to be just Larian, and they'll be able to make a fortune off of this. They can then also do the books, and they actually would probably do a fantastic job, and it'd be very easy for them to make a new division. Or I believe Larian Studios has, I think they have a company in Canada, and they could just use them. Whatever. That's not going to be very hard for them. Trust me. The difference between making role-playing books versus a 400 person studio of a game of Baldur's Gate 3 size, scope, and complexity, it's child's play making these books in comparison. They would be able to do that. They'll make a fortune. They'll then own the D&D brand, which they'll love. Hasbro will then have one D&D and their D&D Beyond, or whatever you want to call it. They'll make their subscriptions on that. They'll be happy. Everyone wins. And we win as fans because, holy crap, if Larian Studios took over Dungeons & Dragons, I could just sleep easy forever. Because I think not only would they, I can't even think about it, they would not just do a great job, they would probably make the greatest version of Dungeons & Dragons ever. They love their fans. The CEO dresses up in freaking plate mail in public. Have you seen their press conferences? Everyone in the company dresses up in cosplay. They love Dungeons & Dragons. And this would be a dream for them to get this. I truly hope this happens. I think it's actually viable because Hasbro would get several $1 million. They would be able to, get rid, I mean, this isn't great for the people working there, but they would be able to get rid of the whole book division and not have to worry about that. They can just worry about D&D Beyond and their VTT, and they can go into kind of maintenance mode and just, keep that running and make profit, which is what D&D Beyond was doing before this. And then when it comes to actually putting out the books and coming up with the rules and all that, they let Larian do it, and they work with Larian to make sure that everything's, the same thing same way D&D Beyond was working before. So, will this happen? I don't know. I'm just spitballing. But it makes sense. And Larian has the money. Tencent would love this, because Tencent would get the D&D brand. They can then reuse it, not just in Larian, but all their studios. We could see dozens of D&D games being made everywhere, and we all win. I actually truly hope this happens. I guess we'll find out, but I do think Hasbro is going to have to start selling things in the near future, and whether it's things like G.I. Joe or Transformers or any of those, I think that they would probably sell D&D before they sold any of those to a deal like this, where everyone wins, as opposed to selling like Transformers off to someone and then just losing it all. That is probably not something they want to do. I don't know. What do you guys think? I think it's very viable. And if you check out my channel at all, you'll see my batting average on these ideas and concepts of things I predicted is nearly 100%. It's pretty damn close. So if this one comes true, well, I just hope it does. Thanks. I'll see you guys all later.